Welcome to the Circuit of Success Podcast.
The Circuit of Success Podcast.
With your host, Brett Gilliland.
Brett Gilliland, Visionary Wealth Advisor.
The Circuit of Success Podcast. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I am your host, Brett Gilliland. Today I've got Eric Pfeiffer with me. Eric, how you doing, man?
I am doing fantastic, enjoying the sunny weather here in San Diego, and glad to be on your podcast.
Well, I'm glad to have you, man. You are the founder and CEO of MPWR Coaching. You are the author of 2 books, Leadership Gravitas and Transform Your Trajectory, your newest one, which we'll talk about here in a little bit later. You are a family man, a married man, a dad, a leader, and you're helping all sorts of leaders around the world. You are a golfer. We started talking a little golf beforehand, so maybe we can dive into that as well. But before we get started, man, if you can, Eric, just give us a little lay of the land of what's helped make you the man that you are today.
Oh, that's a big question. I'll give you a few thoughts. Number one, I grew up in a pretty broken, dysfunctional family that eventually blew up in my college years. My older brother, who's just an amazing human being, invested in me during a lot of those difficult years. And, maybe took on a bit of a parental mentoring role. And I have him to thank for making it through a lot of those difficult years, and then have since then, because of that, learned the value of finding mentors, finding people who are further down the road in some area of my life that I want to grow in. Doesn't mean they're perfect, but they've got something to offer. And I learned the value of proximity. So I would do everything I could to be in the same space with those people, serve them, help them, do anything I could to earn the right to be around them. And it's amazing how much you can learn from other people just by being in proximity to them. And I made that a discipline of my life. I still to this day have various business mentors, men and women who are far more successful than I am and smarter, wiser. And so I just continue to surround myself, man, with people that are better than me. And I find that little by little, I grow a little bit too.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, who we surround ourselves with? My dad always told me that when I was a kid. Who you surround yourself with and the books you read matter. And I'm like, yeah, be quiet. You just don't like my dad, or you don't like my kids, right? Or my friends. And so,
that's right.
But he's right. He's right. I've come to learn that. They're right about a lot of those things. So what got you into this coaching world, man? There's a lot of people that can say I'm a coach, right? And they don't have the results. But you've got a business, man. You've got a legitimate business that you're out helping people all over the country get better, right? Helping them achieve a future in their past, like we talk about at our mission statement. So what is it about you that wanted to get you into coaching, and what are you finding in today's environment people are missing the most?
I never would have dreamed 20 years ago that I would be in this profession. I don't even think it was that popular back then.
Yeah.
Consulting is still very much the wild, wild west. There's really no governing board, no official certifying board, which has its strengths and weaknesses. But long story short, many, many years ago, when I was doing graduate work, I was trying to solve this equation of leadership. I'd read a ton on leadership, and was growing into increasing roles and responsibilities that required more leadership. And if I'm honest, I had a very difficult time translating the theory of the academic work I was mostly exposed to practice, and felt continually frustrated with myself, mostly by my inability to lead more effectively. I happened in my last quarter of my grad work, I happened to cross paths with an older gentleman who had just moved to the US and was in the process of building a coaching business. And I was deeply surprised and enamored with his approach. It was really unique. To this day, I still refer to him as kind of the Steve Jobs of the coaching world. Wow. And he's super innovative. He's not one of these people that just, like Steve Jobs, he didn't really create anything by himself, but he has the ability to take the best of what other people have created and then to put those things together and to innovate. I studied under him for a lot of years as a mentor, as a boss, and learned everything I could from him. And in that process, realized, I slowly transitioned into working with him and realized I really love, first and foremost, I loved the journey that I was on, that I was learning and growing and developing in my own leadership capacity. That's a lot of what the book Leadership Gravitas is about. It's about establishing who we are before we try to help the world around us. Um, and and then over time, I started to get, you get enough feedback like, hey, you're really helpful. You're really good at this. This seems to be a good fit for you. What I call following the breadcrumbs of kind of grace, the indicators that, hey, you're not just good at this, but you're actually helping build this business. You're helping us make money. And kind of Jim Collins's hedgehog.
Yeah.
What are you good at? What are you passionate about? What can you make money at? And I really stumbled into this world of coaching, and then when the time was right, my former mentor released me to start a new coaching business with a slightly different nuance and approach to what our former business was about, and have continued, to bring this full circle, I have continued to, more than anything, enjoy the journey that I'm on, because I really believe that the authority that I have to partner with other leaders is largely born out of the overflow of my experience, what I'm learning, the failures mainly I experience, and how I grow through those. And then let's be honest, leadership is a lonely endeavor, and most people, I think for a long time it was seen as a sign of weakness to have a coach, to have a therapist, to have somebody helping you. I think it's becoming more in vogue, which I'm grateful for. So the honor of partnering with people. So for every leader I work with, they might represent fives, tens, hundreds, or even thousands or tens of thousands of people who are a part of their organization, their enterprise. And so by getting to partner with those leaders, or teams, I'm really getting to have influence on hundreds or thousands of other people, which to me is like, wow, what a privilege, what an
Yeah.
honor.
It is amazing. So I've had a business coach. I go back, gosh, I got into leadership and it's funny when you're talking about that is you think about the things that you become over your career. And I've been in the business since 2001, but I've been a leader and leading other people since 2006. And so, 18 years of having to be the guy that comes into an office and you got to bring a different energy, right? And I've had a business coach most of those years throughout, but for people that maybe have never had a coach, they don't invest in coaches. Maybe they don't believe in spending all that money to have a coach or somebody to help them or tell them what to do. Like, what's a typical coaching relationship look like for you?
That's a great question. So the first thing I would say is there are so many different nuanced types of coaching consulting available out there. I'm really for anything that somebody is trying to grow and develop, and there's likely somebody you can find who specializes or focuses in that area, which I think is really neat. It's largely people who have had some experience and now they want to help other people with their experience. I think finding somebody that you trust. I think confidentiality and trust are two of the most important commodities in any coaching relationship. And then I think it's the coaching relationship that we fight for. The dynamic is one of, first of all, we've developed what we call a leadership operating system. So like any business has their own business systems, computer programs that they utilize to make sure that all the components are communicating and operating well. We've discovered that most organizations haven't paid much attention to their leadership systems. In other words, what's the shared language? What are the shared tools? What are the shared practices that we all agree on that are going to help us communicate and execute on whatever it is more effectively? And so our engagement with clients is very much starts at the top. I've learned the hard way that starting in the middle rarely reaps many rewards, because the people at the top will basically undo whatever you've worked on in the middle of an organization. So we start with the owners, the C-suite level leaders. If they're committed to transforming their culture, which is what we largely focus on, how people operate together, then that's where we begin, and then it kind of trickles down from there. But it's very we resist the, hey, come in once a quarter, give us a 2-day seminar and trust that we'll put it into practice. We're very much, we work with people on a week-to-week basis, which, by the way, every client starts by saying, we cannot afford to give up an hour a week to be on a Zoom call. And then after 3 months, they say, we can't afford not to give up that hour every week on a Zoom call. So it's very much
amazing how that works, isn't it?
Oh gosh, it's crazy.
Well, I always think too, my coaching sometimes, you see it on your calendar. I'm like, oh, I got to meet with the coach. I don't have anything to talk about. And then you get off the phone an hour later. And I'm like, oh my God, thank God we did that. So that was pretty cool. So talk about when you said it just a second ago, how do you transform culture? Like obviously we know what good culture is. We know what bad culture is, but like, how are you doing that? Like, how are we physically going in and making sure we're changing culture for the better?
Yeah, so a way that I define culture, and this is going to be a little bit silly, but tell me if you recognize this tune, right? This is how we do it.
Yeah, I
right?
gotcha. Yeah. Well, it's funny because I was at Delta Tau Delta in college, and so we used to say, "This is how Delts do it" back in the day, right?
Yeah, so we define culture as the prevailing attitudes and behaviors within any team, organization, division, whatever, and which are usually, much to the frustration of the leadership, usually very different to whatever their stated values are on their website or their wall in their offices. And so what we do is we help people through a very simple diagnostic process to begin to identify for themselves, hey, what's working, what's not working? Because there are elements in any culture that are working, and we want to understand why they're working. We want to understand the systemic attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, values that are driving what's working. And then we want to take some time to pay attention to what's not working. And then to help them identify what are the systemic issues that are driving those difficulties. And then what we do is there's got to be some kind of intentional process whereby we not only identify and address those systemic dysfunctions, but where we learn the simple skills of exchanging or transforming those systemic dynamics. And that's what we're a big believer in. Like, we don't want people to be dependent on us forever. We want to equip leaders not only to learn how to change and transform their own culture, but we want to equip them to do it when we're no longer there. That's the big win for us.
It's good. And that, it makes me think of one of my favorite words is choice, right? And there's so many choices we have in our lives, how we respond to things, how we don't respond to things, right? Bad news, good news, whatever it may be. When you hear the word choice or the power of choice, what comes to mind for you?
The introduction of our first book, because there's a whole chapter.
And you did not pay me to say that.
That's right. There's a whole chapter on the power of choice that I think it's one of, for human beings, I think it's one of our greatest superpowers that we overlook or that we abdicate, right? It's easier to blame other people, our parents, our bosses, our coworkers, our clients, customers, our spouses, our kids, politics, whatever, for why things aren't going our way, why our attitudes and behaviors suck. And I think once we can help leaders wake up to the fact that we can't control the world around us, but we are certainly in control of our own attitudes and behaviors, that's a game changer. That's a paradigm shift that we have seen gives leaders a new license on freedom and a sense of like my future, like you were saying, right? The mantra of your business, like we want to help people make their future better than their past. Until people wake up to that reality that they are more in control of their future than they realize, more in control of their sense of peace, satisfaction, fulfillment, they feel stuck, enslaved to what has been. But when they wake up to it, suddenly they feel a whole new lease on life. Not just in their business, but usually across every area of their life.
Yeah, it makes me think. My one of my business coaches for about 2.5 years was Matthew Kelly, big author, just a great guy, and he always talked about mastering the moment of decision. It's like if you can master anything, is master the moment of decision. And when you hear me say that, what comes to mind for you? How are you helping people, and how do you even personally do that?
I'm giggling over here because you just promoted our second book,
Uh, that's awesome.
which, yeah. So our books right now, I'm not writing for popular use as much as to unpack the tools in our core toolkit. Well, the second major tool in our toolkit is all about identifying moments of decision and recognizing them and learning how to um, leverage them to excavate whatever learning is available, whatever growth or transformation is available, and to develop a very, what I would call a kind of simple systemic way of responding in those moments that give us the best chance of putting our best self forward, right? Like we're always going to look back from
Right.
the future on the past and say, I could have done that better, I could have made a better decision, but all we can do today is the best we can today with what we have available to us today. But I shouldn't be shocked by this anymore, but I'm continually shocked that leaders on the whole generally do not, if you ask them, what is your decision making process? They might be able to point at some principles they read in a book or heard on a podcast, but they would not be able to tell you the simple practical process they go through
Yep.
in order to leverage their resources to make good decisions. And if they can't explain that for themselves, then how is it that they're going to help the people on their teams or in their organization do the same?
I love that. Another topic I've been having a lot of discussions with some clients is that progress, not perfection. And I think most hard charging leaders, Type A personalities, whatever it may be, right? Oh, I'm gonna start working out, 6 days a week, and they haven't worked out, 6 times in the last 4 months, but yet we think we're gonna do this, and then we beat ourselves up over it when we don't do it. And so now I'm constantly talking to people about progress, not perfection. Let's set a little goal, which when I was in my 20s, I wouldn't have thought that. Let's set as big a goal as we can get, give it hell, burn the ships, let's go make it happen. But now it's that simple thing that we can do, but we do it consistently day in and day out without missing. So talk about that.
Yeah, well, Brett, forgive me, but in our world, there's a little joke that whenever somebody brings a question up like that, the phrase is, well, we've got a tool for that. So we do have a tool for that. And the tool basically helps people understand, just like you said, that big changes largely are born out of lots of small, regular habits that we're able to employ in our life. There's a lot of books, right, out there on the power of employing habits in our life. We've heard the phrase, practice, makes perfection. It doesn't. Practice, like you said, does really lead to progress more than perfection. So what we do is we encourage people, if they've heard of the concept of lead and lag measures, we encourage people to understand that we're far better off when we have set a goal of whatever we want to accomplish in life, whether it's personal or professional, to identify what we want to accomplish, and then to identify what are the lead measures, what are the things that we need to do on a daily, weekly, or seasonal basis, pardon me, that are going to cultivate and give us the best opportunity of achieving what we want to achieve. So, for example, I have the privilege of working with the Atlanta Hawks, an NBA basketball team, and I sat with the gentleman who's the current general manager, and he had the daunting task of taking over an organization that was struggling, and of course, in any professional sporting organization, the goal is always to win a championship, and if we win a championship, that kind of solves everything. And he took a different approach. He said, instead, that may be something we would love to achieve, but wouldn't it be better to think we want to develop a championship caliber program? And then from there, he backfilled and asked the question, what are the lead measures? What kind of people do we need to onboard? What kind of players do we need to onboard? What are the things that we need to practice on a daily, weekly, seasonal basis in any part of our organization that is going to give us the best chance of building a championship caliber program? And so we call this the rule of the law of indirect effort, right? Like, a lever is understood as, you pull on the lever and you use a little bit of strength, and that lever actually gives you exponential strength to move something. Well, in the same way, like you're saying, what we call these predictable patterns, these small habits that we attend to, actually have significant power to move big things in our lives and help us accomplish much bigger things than I think we could have by sheer direct effort, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at, again, your daily habits, you look at the leaders, whether it's in the MBA or businesses, wherever it may be, like, and let's even be more focused on you. Like, what are the habits that you do every day? Like, if I followed you around with a camera, we're not missing. What are those things?
Oh, I love that you asked that because a former mentor challenged me with that same question. Like, Eric, if I followed you around every single day and I saw every moment, what could I learn from you that would help me understand how you achieve what you achieve? So just a few to name them. When our kids were growing up, now they're 21 and 19 away at college, and so they're more independent. But when they were younger, we made every effort to eat breakfast every morning. We had a morning ritual at breakfast that lasted maybe 12 minutes, where we sat around and we shared what's one hope and what's one thank you that you want to start the day with. And then we would read a short story from a kid's book. And then somebody, our household is a household of faith. And so one person at the table would say a short prayer for the rest of our day. We did the same every single evening, where we would come back, have dinner together, and go through a few things that we did ritually. So that if you asked my kids today, what did we do as a family every single day, they'd be able to tell you even today what that was. Every night I would put my kids to bed and give them just what I call a father's blessing, or just an encouragement. I would tell them, I love you. I'm proud of you. No matter what happened today, I'm proud of you. And those things matter. For myself personally, I practice the discipline of journaling, which is something that a former mentor introduced me to, not because any one journal entry is going to move the needle on anything, but what I discovered is that over weeks and months of consistent journaling, it's the practice of paying attention to my own life and excavating the learning and the kind of the nuggets of wisdom that I'm extracting from my life experiences or learning from other people. So people ask me all the time, like, how do you remember so much of what you've learned over the years? I said, because I have a record. I literally have 20 plus years of journal entries that I constantly look back and read over. And then you can add in there, I go to the gym almost every single day. My diet is very particular because as I get older, I just got to take care more of my body. I have email disciplines. And by the way, just so we're clear, I'm not a naturally disciplined or organized person.
Yep.
But I have discovered that the more my schedule is set and committed to these predictable patterns, right? So it's kind of like budgeting your checkbook. If you don't budget your finances, the money's going to go one way or another. That's right. So I think about that with my time. I want to very intentionally budget my time and to invest in the things that I believe are going to move the needle the most over a long period of time.
Yeah. So I agree with all that. I started journaling in July of 2005, and it was probably one of the biggest game changers I've ever had. And it's funny. I'm a shameless plug here. I've got my own journal that's actually on Amazon, and so lots of great exercises in there. But
love it.
One of the things that came to mind for me, a question I wanted to ask was: is there anything now? And I can give you an example of one of mine if you'd like. But is there anything
Please.
that you know now that works, but people will argue, not argue like an argument, but like they'll fight doing it, even though to your core this freaking thing is gonna work?
Okay, I'm gonna put it back on you first. I'd love to hear your example.
All right, so I've got a few, but the most important one is through my journal. I call it strategic think time. Okay, so I've had this same exact journal. I buy the same ones every year. And I read them through Christmas and New Year's, that time off. How do you remember stuff? Well, I remember back when I was writing in July of 2005, the things that were scary then, I'm like, holy crap, I can't believe that was scary. But I call it strategic think time because for an hour and a half every single week since 2005, unless I'm on a family vacation or something, I spend time with me, an ink pen, and my journal. That's it.
Wow.
Right? And the things, the ideas, the creativity, the dreams, oh my God, I got bad news. How am I going to get myself out of this? Right? Like those things have come from that time. But no matter how many times I've told this to people, they're like, oh, but yeah, you don't understand. I can't give up an hour and a half or this or that. It's like they've always got this excuse, right? And I'm like, all right, I'm sure you're different than everybody else, right? We all have 24 hours in a day. It's how do we spend those times? And if you book it, you got to follow it. You got to do it. And it's been a game changer, but people will argue that for that success, or they won't keep the weakliness of it time and time again.
Oh gosh. Well, I'll play off that a little bit because I do think this conversation around journaling is so incredibly important, and everybody I work with is initially very resistant, reluctant for a variety of reasons. I don't know how to journal. I tried it. I didn't get much out of it. I didn't know where to start. What if somebody finds my journals? What do I actually write in it? So I would say, and there's so many great journal aids, like you guys have one, we have one. There's a lot of them out there that can be incredibly helpful in terms of giving us prompts or just a framework to utilize to get us going. I would say this, about every 3 months, once a quarter, I actually, for the last 3 months of my journal entries, I actually go back through and I take probably 3 hours on a Friday morning. That's the day I don't travel usually. I try to not have any set meetings because I use those Fridays for other reasons. But once a quarter, I actually go back and read over my journal entries with the expressed purpose of what can I learn from my own life journey. So just like you said, like, wow, I'm realizing that I was so scared or so anxious or stressed about this situation 3 months ago or 2 months ago or even a week ago, and that's resolved itself. Or wow, I was really upset about this situation, or I didn't know how to solve this problem, and wow, I realize now that we made it through, we figured it out. Or gosh, you know what, I'm realizing as I'm reading back through my journals that there's this kind of issue that keeps coming up that I'm still not addressing, that I really need to find some help for. There's so much to learn as we read back over the story of our own lives. And I tell people, if you can have an F on journaling, and it's still better than not journaling at all.
Yeah.
Because the discipline of forcing ourselves into self-reflection, and what I would say is even more important, the practice of self-awareness. What are we thinking at any given time? What are the prevailing emotions? How are we interpreting the life around us? And I tell people, if you want to experience personal transformation without having to sit in a therapist's office every day, without having to meet with your coach every single day, like this is something you can do for yourself that will radically move the needle. The problem is it won't move the needle in 1 or 2 days or even maybe 12 days. It moves the needle over a period of time.
Yeah. Maybe not even in a year.
Right? That's right. That's correct.
So it makes me think of one of my exercises I love doing, and people that listen to this podcast religiously, they're going to say they already know where I'm probably going with this. But if you haven't heard it, is I talk about my gratitude worksheet. And so again, at the end of 90 days, I go through my calendar quarter and I actually go take my cell phone and I will go and look at every picture I've taken over the last 90 days and I write it down, right? So I literally will write your name down and at the end of June or July, right? And I'll write down podcast with Eric Pfeiffer, right? And spend time thinking about that we got to spend time together, right? That we got to talk, or I went to this lunch with my family, or I went on this trip with my kids and my wife, right? Whatever it may be, how many of us actually slow down and think about the life that we're living and focus on the good that's there versus all the negative crap that you can get from the news?
Brett, tell the listeners, how do they get access? How do I get access to this gratitude work you're talking about? I love it.
You go to Amazon.com and look up Future Greater Than Your Past, Brett Gilliland. The journal is right there. And you're also going to go there. While you're there, you're going to buy Eric's books. So we'll buy my journal and your books, and we'll just plug each other's stuff right here, huh?
I love it. Well, Brett, what I tell people all the time is, we have unlimited access to so much amazing content from leaders, things that we're all doing that have helped us, that we would say are critical to our own growth and development and success. But what I tell people also is, it is so easy to get overwhelmed by all of the different things that we ought or should do. And I tell people, pick one flippin' thing that you somehow resonate with and just commit to it for 3 months. Like even our clients, we require that our clients make an upfront 3-month commitment to their contract. And then after that, we go month to month, because people hate this. People that are on my board are like, no, you need to have a 9-month or 12-month commitment. I said, no. If they make a month commitment, we should experience, at least by 3 months, some of the tangible effects of any discipline that we employ in our life. It may not be as big as we would hope it would be, but we should be able to identify the impact.
Yeah. Plus, I think it says confidence about you and your business, right? That we're going to deliver, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Well,
we're the same thing in our wealth management, in our firm. Our advisors, we don't sign non-competes and non-solicits, right? It's like, look, we got to earn your business. And if you don't want to be here, who am I to say after you've had a business for 25 years that you're tied to us contractually? We don't want that. That's not what it's about. I think it's a big deal for you. It's a big deal for us. Talk about the vision that you have. Like, where do you see this space going? What are you excited about? Where are you trying to take your business and your world to next?
Oh man, I could talk about this for hours. The big picture vision is I am desperately committed to putting the tools that we've developed into the hands of as many human beings as possible, because I think all humans are leaders, because we all have influence in different areas of our life. Yeah. With that, I would say that everything we do is, in terms of actually building our business, is predicated on what are the things that we need to develop that are going to help us accomplish that. So working with, an NBA basketball team, or a large private equity group, or a health, company, or a brewery. We work with so many different types of organizations, because, wherever there are people, that's where we belong. You can work with any one of those organizations and you can impact that organization, which we love doing. But my real passion is, I believe that these tools represent the skills, the core skills that I wish I had had when I was younger. It's what our clients tell us. These tools and the practices of these tools transform marriages, families, parents, physical health, finances. Because like I said, these are not just little, think of a difference between an app on your iPhone or smartphone versus the operating system. The apps help us do very specific, nuanced things, and we need as many apps as we have tasks that we want to accomplish. But what most people don't pay attention to is the underlying operating system. And all of us as humans have an operating system that we've inherited, that we've developed, that we've accumulated over the years. And so what I know is that what's broken in the world, I believe, can be at some level solved, healed, reconciled, made better when people are practicing the skills of what we call emotional intelligence. And I don't mean that just as emotional regulation. I don't lose my shit anymore. I'm nicer to people. I mean people's ability to practice increasingly greater self-awareness and self-leadership, which allows them to actually invest in the people around them more effectively. Right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It absolutely does. And I think, to your point, and this may or may not be where you're going with it, but to invest in your people, as you talked about, I just had this discussion with somebody the other day, and it's scary to think about hiring people, right? And I've had my first assistant since 2003, so I'm 21
You're
years
lucky.
now of having. What's that?
You're lucky.
Yeah, well, it's in it, but here's the funny part about it though, is I am lucky. I'm very lucky. But the year I hired an assistant was the worst year. The year before, right? Ended in December. I hired an assistant in January. It was the worst year of my career financially, right? So imagine going home and saying, "Man, babe, we had a bad year. We just built a new house, and I'm going to hire an assistant, right? We can't afford this." But what did I do though? I said, I believe in myself. I believe in the process. I believe in going out and the things that I don't want to do, that I'm not uniquely qualified to do. I can leverage that, go do what I'm qualified to do. It was investing in somebody with belief that it's going to work.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and I just had this discussion recently. Another person's business is really growing. They're going to hire another person. They're talking about how scared they are. Like, I get it. Every time we hire somebody, I'm scared, but it always works. Right. So when we invest in people, what have you learned from basically what I just said, but also what you've learned is when we invest in people, what happens?
Well, first of all, I am who I am today in large part because of the people, whether it's mentors, my incredible wife, my older brother, friends, peers who have invested in me. I really believe that. We just can't do it alone. And
Right.
I would also say this, our first book called Leadership Gravitas, the whole point of the book is how do we become leaders worth following, right? You're only a leader if you look behind you and people are following you. And I think, especially in the current era where there is this massive transition in the leadership of organizations from, the former generations, right? The boomer generation, the Gen X generation right now, to millennials, to Gen Xers, and to whatever else, other labels we want to put. There is an increasing demand that younger people are putting on leaders in companies, no matter what size of company, to say, I have to be more than a cog in the wheel that makes you money. I have to, my who I am has to matter to you. My personal development, my growth trajectory, my future has to be tied into my willingness to spill my blood, sweat, and tears in this current organization. And I think that organizations that are waking up to that, who are taking it seriously, who are beginning to implement leadership development as a major investment in at every level of their organization, are actually finding young leaders who are not only willing to give them a chance, but are willing to stay. Because we're giving these young people a lot of crap for changing jobs every 3 months or every 6 months, and quote unquote ghosting companies. Which again, I'm not advocating for a lack of professionalism, but I think part of that is a wake up call to us as an older generation of leaders, which I now put myself in at 47, to say we can say they need to change, but what are they trying to tell us about the cultures that we've created that is leaving them feeling unseen, unheard, unvalued, underinvested in? And let's be honest, like, as parents, what do? We invest in our kids because we believe they're going to do greater things than we do. It's like inherent in our DNA as parents to say, I want my ceiling to be my kid's floor.
Yeah.
What if, as leaders, we took on a similar posture and said, hey, I want to build a business and a culture where we are investing in the next generation who can take this organization or take other organizations, take our economy, take our social dynamics, our political landscape further than we've known how to go. But when people at the top are too preoccupied with their own profits, with their own benefits, and let's be honest, in our worst moments as parents, we can lose sight of the importance of investing in our kids. I think we don't only miss out on the present. I think we miss out on the future that all of us are desperately trying to build.
Yeah. So how do we get out of our comfort zones? Because I think it's easy to stay there, right? It's nice and warm and cuddly. So how do we get the heck out of that place?
Oh gosh, I'll give you three things that I encourage our clients to remember about this. Number one, it is oftentimes we will not pursue change until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. That's not a quote I said. It's somebody smarter than me who said that, but it's Henry Cloud in the book Boundaries. Absolutely true.
100%.
We tend to stay with what's familiar because change represents a threat. It represents a loss of what was, even if it's a good change. So number one, we have to pay attention to the pain points in our life that are trying to wake us up to the opportunities for change, transformation, and growth. Number two, I say we desperately need game tape. Right. So the professional organizations or sporting organizations that I've worked with, they put a ton of emphasis on watching game tape. Why? Because when you're in the thick of the battle on the field, you're so unaware of what's happening around you. Right. You have a very myopic perspective when you're on the field. And so they watch game tape to step back and develop a more objective perspective of what's going on around them so that they can pay more attention to how they're impacting any play. Now, in life, the way that we can create our own game tape is to find trustworthy people and we ask them proactively for feedback. hey, tell me where you feel like I'm winning and where I'm not. Tell me where I'm operating well, where I'm not. Tell me when I handle conflict well, when I don't. Tell me what you think are the strengths of my decision-making process and what are the weaknesses, right? Tell me where I'm impacting my environment as an asset. And could you please reflect back to me where you think I'm potentially a liability? It doesn't mean that those people are accurate or right. It just means that as leaders, if we really want to take our growth seriously, we have to get feedback, which is going to inevitably make us feel uncomfortable because we're going to hear some things we don't like, especially if we have the courage to ask our own spouses or our adult children, because I've been in the cauldron of discomfort over the last 3 months working through marriage stuff and parenting issues as a father. And yet, without that feedback, we will continue, like I tell people, we will continue to ride blind. It's like flying a plane without instrumentation in the clouds. It's like you don't know where up is or down. It's gonna crash.
Yep. So, and you said there's a third one. So you got the pain has gotten obviously greater than the situation. You got game tape, and what was that third one?
Yeah. The third one is, and again, promoting our new book, Transform Your Trajectory. This introduces a simple tool that actually gives people a practical step-by-step process that we can use over and over and over again, every minute, every day, to not only pay attention to the experiences of our life that are significant, right, which are usually indicated by some strong emotions, but we need a way to excavate the learning, the wisdom, right, from those life experiences. And I think too often we're relying on podcast, books, other people to give us that wisdom.
Yeah.
And when we need to develop a simple discipline of how to do that for ourselves, which again will take us out of our comfort zone, because we're going to have to practice some honesty and humility, some self-love, which is usually uncomfortable for most of us ambitious people, but pushing ourselves out of the comfort zone. You know, like when you go to the gym, if you're not willing to lift 5 more pounds at some point, then your muscles will not grow.
Yeah. Fairly simple, isn't it?
Pretty simple. Just
Pretty
hard
simple.
to do.
Yeah. The last thing, and we'll dive into where people can learn more about you and get connected with you. But I think it brings me back to the why. Like I heard that saying early on in my career, when you know your why, anyhow is possible. And it's just in normal everyday conversations, you know, you can have with people. And it's like, well, what's your why? Like, why are you choosing to do that? Right. Or where do you want to go? And it's like, again, me throwing you the keys in my car and saying, go, if you don't have a GPS system, you're never going to get there. Right. So I think we just need to slow down as human beings, right. And think about why we're doing what we're doing and where we want to go with clarity of that, have it written down, and have a lot of reasons why we want to go do it. Would you agree?
100%.
Yeah. Awesome. Where do our listeners find more of Eric Pfeiffer?
Real easy. Everything ultimately ties back to our core website, www.mpwrcoaching.com, mpwrcoaching.com. One of my former business partners thought it would be clever to yank the vowels out of the word empower. But that really does speak to the purpose of our business, to empower people to be the best version of themselves. And then we're available on all the, typical socials platforms. They can find us there. And what we tell people more than anything else is our endeavor, our passion is to partner with people to help them unlock a greater measure of their potential. And so if anybody's looking for that, not quite sure, feeling frustrated, we would love to chat with you, not because we're necessarily the solution or the partnership for you, but because we are desperate to help people connect with whatever resources may help them on that journey.
Awesome. Well, we will put all this stuff in the show notes, Eric. Man, it's been awesome having you on the Circuit of Success podcast. Hang with me while I turn this off, but man, I really appreciate your time today.
Can I say one thing, Brett?
Absolutely.
For your listeners, I just want you to know I've been on a lot of podcasts, and you have fantastic questions that I will likely borrow if I ever leave my own podcast.
Just steal those shamelessly. Well, I appreciate that, man. I love what we get to do, and it's as I told you before we started recording, man, it's a passion, something that just came from an idea that now we get to talk to amazing people like you, and we will turn them on to your book, Transform Your Trajectory, MPWRcoaching.com. And Eric, been great being with you, my man.